So, yeah, okay, great. So it's nice seeing you. We're going to be discussing now, it's really part two of the introduction to Kabbalah. So if you have any questions, Jen, then just let me know. It's not a problem. We can answer that. Okay, great. So let's get started. So let me just run through very quickly what we spoke about last time, all right? We spoke about how the Sefer Otzot Chaim talks about a kitzur of what's going to happen from the beginning of the creation all the way down to, what we're doing to present day. So at the beginning, Hashem decided to make a mokum tzimtzum. And then mokum tzimtzum mean a mokum halal, an empty space within the Or and Sof, within that great light. And then he entered this white light over here. You can see with my cursor over here. It's called the Kav. And the interesting part we spoke about yesterday is as he's entering this light, all this white part, let's say, is the Ein Sofs, the white lights, or Chesed. And this black space is emptiness. So that's this is the Kav, which is coming in, the light which is coming in. And as it's coming in, this is what I was telling you yesterday, is Me'agel. It goes around, and then goes a little bit deeper into that empty space, and it goes around. And basically, it's bringing in the Or and Sof, this infinite light, into this very dark vacuum. Okay, and then it continues. It goes further and further and further. It goes all the way down, but not to the end. Remember, because we said if the light had to come all the way down, that would split the mokum tzimtzum in half, and everything will be chozeh totally bohu. Everything will return back to its original state of Or and Sof, and that would negate everything that he created. And then this one line became what we call the first paltzev. This is what I think where we got up to yesterday. Okay, so this is what we spoke about yesterday, called the Adam Kadmon. Now, not to be mistaken with Adam Arishon, because Adam Kadmon is called, in English, we'd call him the primordial man. Primordial. Yeah, primordial in English. And then Adam Arishon, that was the first man. That's Adam. That's Adam. Adam, he had a wife, Chava. We're way before that in the story. That was in the creation of the world. We're not even up to there. We're talking about before all the universes were created. This is the Mokum Halal. There was absolutely zero here. Nevertheless, this is called Adam Kadmon. Now, why do we call them Adam? Does this look like a person to you? Not really. But what it is that every person is made up of three kavim. This is what we spoke about. So the right side, well, let's call this the right side, okay, for just argument's sake. So all this, first of all, is considered to be Adam Kadmon, consisting of 10 spheres. 10 spheres. Now, the Arizal says very clearly that there's nothing, absolutely nothing, is not composed of 10 spheres. That's a big statement, because you think only people would have the spheres, but no, everything consists of 10 spheres. Now, you can categorize this vertically or horizontally. Now, I mean, you can say, as we know, the top one is Keseh, the bottom one is Malchus, and the other ones are, so let's go, right. So Keseh, Chochma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus. Those are the 10. I'll show you later on.
Right, that's 11 though, because, well, we know Das and Kesser, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that's 100%. That's a good question. The Mefarshim asked this question. They all ask this question. Arizal always makes a mention of the 10 spheres, but often you find 11. So he considers that Das is a sphera, but it's not a necessary sphera. Rather, it's an all-inclusive sphera, meaning that we divide the parts of as follows. We divide the parts of the first triad, Keseh, Chochma, Bina, and then Das really belongs to the next 6. Okay, so Das would include the Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. So all of those 6 are really all included in Das. So if that's so, then you really don't have to include Das. Okay, so the das is the pnimius, and this next 6 spheres are the chitzonius. Okay, that's sort of you could say das is all inclusive, and the next one are just details of that das. So therefore, you don't have to really include das. So sometimes
So
that's
it's,
included, sometimes it's not included.
so it's the pneumius of the midas.
Right, right. So that's why sometimes it's included, sometimes it's not, depending on what he's referring to, what he's speaking about exactly. Okay. Yeah, I don't know that. Okay, now that's it. So that's really be'etzem. There's only 10. There's only 10. So yeah, that's it. So let's move on now. Yeah. So what was I going to say as well? You can categorize them vertically or horizontally, and you have to get this clear in your mind, because the Arizal, when he speaks, when we start reading the text, he speaks. He just throws these notions out on day one, and expects you to know this already. So let's go over them. So you have the 10 spheres. You have to memorize the 10
Right.
spheres, and then you have to memorize as well the abbreviations of them. So so there would be, if you go horizontally down, is Chabad, Chagat, Nahim. Okay, that's if you split them horizontally. If vertically, it will be Chacham Bagadati. Chacham, that's Chesed, Chochma, Chesed, Netzach. And then on the left-hand side would be Bina,
Gura,
and Hoid, right? Chacham Baga, and the Dati, that's Das, Tiferes, Yesod, and Malchus, Datim. Okay, Chacham Baga Datim. Okay, you have to know this, because it's nothing that we can skip out. You just have to memorize those terminology.
The first ones I know, but the other,
Chacham Baga Datim. Right.
the Chabad, Chagas, Nahim, I know that. But,
right. That's more common, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. Now, we have to understand that, as we spoke about yesterday, through this manifestation, remember, it was a kav. And then we'll see in Etz Chaim, actually we won't see this in Etz Chaim. Etz Chaim says clearly that this kav split into 3 parts. And that's what it became. Okay, so really when we talk about the kav, there's 3 kavim. Chacham Bagadati. Okay, and why we call this Adam? Well, the question's the other way. Why do we call ourselves Adam? We're Bnei Adam, because we're fashioned like this primordial man, because we have 3 sides to us, like we spoke yesterday. We have a right side to ourselves, a left side, we have a middle. Okay, that's what it says in the Pashut, in the Pasuk, B'Tselem Elokim, we're fashioned like gods, like the gods, Elokims. Elokims, and that is a reference to this, which is called Adam Kadmon, and as well you have to be also familiar with the abbreviation of Ak.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an often used abbreviation, Ak, Aleph, abbreviation, Kuf, that you'll find that often mentioned. That is Ak. That's a short version. Okay. Now through this, what we call this is called a paltzuf. Now the literal translation in English, paltzuf just means face.
Right.
But rather we're going to use it in the context of paltzuf as a complete unit. A face is a complete unit, but here in this context, in Kabbalah, it's used as the entire edifice, the entire structure or system of it. It's a system of 10 units working together. That is called a paltzuf. That is called a paltzuf. I'm going to tell you a Ramchal. A Ramchal says something very interesting, because a lot of people get this don't understand the system of spheres. Because when we're introduced, or we read any Chassidus Sfarim or anything, even English Kabbalah, whatever, people think they're individual entities. Well, that's true in a way. But the Ramchal gives a very nice mashal. He says it's like an animal that's been cut up into pieces. So you have, for example, a cow, And it's kind of, you have the head of the cow, the leg of the cow, the body of the cow. And when you look at the cow all separated like that in different pieces, you say, well, there's the legs of the cow, and there's the feet of the cow, and that's the head of the cow. But that's not really true, because it's not really a cow. It's a leg, and it could be, for all intents and purposes, it could belong to another cow, that leg, because there's no particular relationship between that leg and the cow anymore, because now the cow doesn't exist. You follow what I'm saying here?
Mm-hmm. So,
Masha Ainken, when the cow is alive, you can say those are the legs of the cow. That's the head of the cow.
mm-hmm.
So we'll look at them individually, saying that's the leg of a cow, but it goes without saying that you cannot separate the leg from the cow and still consider to be the leg of the cow, because now, for all intents and purposes, it's useless. Like I said, you could have put a piece of wood there instead of the leg and say, that was where the leg was. So that leg is not. So therefore, the Ramchal explains that these spheres, to look at them individual, is like looking at the leg of a dead cow. They're useless. The spheres only come into stead, bepoel, when they're used as a unit. When they converge together to be one unit, that's when you have the power of the spheres working together.
So like a living cow, a live cow.
That's right, a living
Right.
entity. It's
Right.
that's exactly what it is. It's a living entity. As you are alive, these patu are living entities. They are not structures that Hashem put into the celestial realm as inanimate objects, but rather they are actually living entities, which not only they're living, they give us life force as well.
Mm-hmm.
As we'll speak about more in details when we get into what are these powers. They're all powers, but the point I'm trying to make right now, they only work as a unit. So therefore, that's important to understand. You never speak about them individually. And if we do, it's only for learning purposes, but you have to know that they're really all connected. And they cannot work individual without the others. Okay, so enough said about that point, but that's important to understand that. You won't just find like one sphere of chesed flying around someplace, you know what I mean?
Right.
That doesn't work, or say a pshetlach about chesed, you know what I mean? You'll have to inevitably speak about the other spheres which are attached to it. As you see all these connecting lines, that's based on the Sefer Yetzirah, which is miyuchas to Avram Avinu or the Malach Ariel, so those are the converging lines of the Lamed Beis Nesivos HaChokmah. They're all really connect into one, converging and sending both up and down energy, which enables them to function. Okay, that's important to know. Where's the sorry? Look at. Okay, so that's important. Now, you know what? I want to show you something very important, but I didn't put it on the list of pictures. But give me a second. I want to add something over here to the list of things that you need to know. And okay. And also this one I want to give you as well. Okay, so let's continue over here. Okay, so let's continue. Sorry.
It's okay.
Now, we want to understand that, as we spoke yesterday, from Adam Kadmon came out all the worlds. All the worlds came out from him, No, that's not the one I want to see right now. All the worlds came out from Adam Kadmon, and there's 5 worlds. So we have the world of Atzilus, the world of Bria, the world of Yetzirah, and the world of Asiya. That's where we live. We live in the world of Asiya. And we spoke as well, there's another world which is around the world of Asiya, which is called Olam Chitzonim. The Chitzonim, which is sort of the negative power, which keeps the balance. We spoke about yesterday that it's all Elokuts, it's all the goodness. It's everything is good. Even if it's bad, it's only to keep our free choice balance. That's the way that Arizal explains. Because if everything was good, there was no point of being here. We need a free choice. We need a bad and good in order to choose. So it's all around us. The world of, it's called the Olam HaKlipas, is all around this lower world.
All around the Olam Asiya?
The world of Asiya, yeah. Yeah. Well, there are different discussions of how far does it go. We know for sure, we have a pasuk that says, Lo yugoru ra. Yugoru ra means that the Chitzon will definitely not live here in this world of Atzilus. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. So there is mention of them being in Bria and Yetzirah. It's true. And to be honest, we also have, contradictions in the Arizal that he also mentions that they are also in Atzilus. But the way they resolve that, it's that we'll speak about this concept of Erkei Kanuyim. It's really based on perspective. Because you have, even in the highest, holiest world, of Atzilus, you'll have different levels of holiness, different levels, madregas we call them, of holiness. That means the closer you come to the source with Hashem, the holier the level is. So compared to a higher level, the lower level would be called Chitzonim.
Right.
And if you move up higher, the lower level to that would be Chitzonim, even though previously it was Kedusha, it was holiness. So that's how they answer the questions. How can you mention that there's Chitzonim and Atzilus? Teretz is really, there's no Chitzonim in Atzilus. It's only a comparative figure of speech. Mm-hmm. Okay, but generally, what we speak about the Olam HaChitzon is really only in the world of Atzilus.
Okay.
In Asiya, right? So these are the names of the. I just want to put that up. It should have been beforehand. Chochma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Tiferes. Hod, Netzach, Yesod, Umalchus. And this is what I meant by the vertical spread. So you have the right-hand side, okay? It's all right, his left, but, we'll put that aside for the moment. So this is Chachan. So we'll call that generically as well as the Chesed, line. Okay, Sad HaChesed, the side of the Chesed. We'll call all 3 of these, Bina, Gvo, and Hod, we'll call that the line of judgment or din. Mm-hmm. And generally, we'll also find a reference to the middle kav, the middle line, as the kav of mercy. Mm-hmm. Okay, Rachamim. Okay, so again, I'm not trying to confuse you, but I'm just trying to prep you that when we start learning in depth the Sefer Otzot Chaim, you'll see a lot of references, a lot of different references to the same thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you see it's called Chachan, you see it's called Chochma, you see it's called Chesed, but really it's all pointing to the same thing. He's just trying to emphasize one point over the other. Okay. Right, let's move on to the next slide. So just conceptually, we want to understand what's going on here. So there is, from the conception, from where we were up to, from the Kav, Yosha, that the Or and Sof, that holy light was coming into the Mokum Ponui, created the Parzuf. And we'll discuss example, there's actually 5 Parzufim that were created. And from those Parzufim, they are ingrained in every aspect of the world. Like I said, we're B'Tselem Elokim, but there's no way we can get out of it. And therefore, we have an interesting relationship between us and the Parzufim. That means that even though we're B'Tselem Elokim, And that means they are our roots, and we are the manifestation of those roots. But it goes vice versa as well. When we do something on this world, on this plane, this three-dimensional plane, we move those patzufim as well. Okay, and this is going to be what we call the avoida. The avoida. It's mentioned a lot in the Chassidus Shalom. The avoida. What do we mean by the avoida? The avoida is through our movements. We're going to move the spiritual world. Okay, so it works both ways. We'll speak more about that. But it's not only that; it's also all of Bria, like I said. So the patzufim are not exclusively for us. But really, everything is attached to the patzuf, and they get their hashpah. We spoke about the role of the kavim, and we spoke about the role of gilgulim. Remember,
right?
Kavim has to do with the hashkacha pchatis. That means the individual destiny of each thing, and the circular formation there in the black circle, the black halal, that has to do with more the nature of things. Okay, so you see that the patzufim will affect us. And also, they will affect things in our reality as well, as animal life, plant life, and so on and so forth. And then it goes without saying that if we are attached to the patzufim, and the creation is attached to the patzufim, therefore we'll have an automatic relationship and effect on our environment. So whatever we do will not only affect the patzufim, will also affect the entire environment, because Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, we are all one. So that's why Chazal talk about that the importance of not doing something a transgression, because that will affect the Mikalkil Olamos. That will create destruction in all the world, because we're all basically one, with this illusion that we're separate, and therefore we can calculate all the bria with one little action. So, a famous, we all know about Lashon Hara, talking bad about people, and how can that affect. So you think about Lashon Hara, you say, well, of course, if you talk bad about somebody, you're going to obviously, ruin their reputation. They won't be able to get a job, and therefore that's only on a physical basis. But what about all the spiritual damage you're making to that person? Because as we're saying over here, is that we're all connected one to the other, and when you utter something, you're really manipulating the patzufim. You're also manipulating the rest of the creation negatively. Now, it's interesting. On the side note, I gave a class yesterday to a group of seminar girls, and I spoke about how, the power of the speech. And I showed them a little clip about this Dr. Moto. Have you ever heard of him?
With the water, yeah.
You heard of him?
Yes.
That he's done tests how speech can affect the molecular structure of water. If you speak good to water, then it will have you'll crystallize you freeze and you'll crystallize. You see, the crystals are beautiful. When you speak bad about the water, then what happens? The crystals are not organized, and they're brown looking. And I said to them, a person is 80% water. So so we speak about Lashon Hara. We just think about speaking bad about a person, ruining the reputation. But you have to think on a subatomic level. On a spiritual level, that what's happening is that you are negatively affecting them, on that level as well. It's not on a physical level; it's also on a medical level. And that's why I like to always bring science together with Kabbalah, because you can see how it works. Okay,
You're affecting yourself also negatively, right? If you're saying that. Talking negatively and you're made of water, then you makaltal yourself.
100%. That is totally control. Yeah, 100%. That comes in depression, all that. That's why it's so bad for a person, because it'll affect you negatively. Yeah. Besides the emotional effects of it as well. Okay. So that is the possible. So we'll get more into the patzuf later on. Okay, there's another concept you have to know before you delve into the world of Kabbalah, is a concept called Naganji. Naganji is short for Neshama, Ruach, nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yechida. Nefesh, so that's basically the soul. The soul in Hebrew is called neshama, but that's a generic name for 5 parts of the soul. The first part of the soul is the lowest part of the soul, which is actually manifests in the liver. In the liver, that's called the nefesh. The ruach, it manifests itself in the heart. The third part of the soul, which is called neshama, is the nefesh chayim. Says it's just between the akabayim, that means the heels of the neshama. Let's say it's 0.999% of the neshama is just between your eyes. That means just hovering above and up and above. A lot of people think the neshama is in your body. It's not. The neshama is just the lowest part of the neshama is there, but it's a higher. It's hovering above, and then you have what the two makifim called. You have chaya, which is the closer makiv, which surrounds you. And then you have a larger neshama, which is much, much larger, surrounding all of you again, much higher as well, above all of them. That's called yechida. Okay, and that's what we call in English auras. A lot of people, the non-Jewish, have this idea of auras. And we also have that belief as well, because those come under Chai Yechida, and the Arizal was known that he could perceive auras and tell them all about them, and tell everything about a person through their auras, because it's not that the aura or the Chai Yechida is outside. It manifests itself inside. It's not a separate soul. It's a manifestation of the Nefesh Ruach Neshama, and then it glows up and then blows itself larger to the point where it can't manifest itself in the body. It's way, way too powerful. So therefore, if you can see the aura outside, this is a separate discussion. Therefore, you can tell everything about a person, what he's feeling inside of him, because that aura really belongs inside, just that it's not only inside, it's outside as well. Okay, that's how it works, And we're talking about that an aura has all the information about a person from the beginning of the inception of the person till the growth of the person.
Does re-explain how to do that, or re-explain how to reveal?
Unfortunately, it doesn't explain that. I have classes on that actually, how I explain to do that. It's a fascinating thing. That's more based on what we were talking about yesterday about Sha'arei Kedusha from Rav Chaim Vital on the fourth chelik, that what mostly in most editions were not published because apparently it was too dangerous for people to see it, because it has all the names of the angels and all that. So a lot of for many years it wasn't published, that last chapter. So chelik Dala was just recently published. One of the last 5-6 years. There he speaks about meditation, how you can raise your meranchi higher. And once you have that higher perspective, then you can start feeling your way into auras, and you're into that space, in that spiritual realm, that you can start connecting to other spiritual beings. We're all spiritual.
Right.
The question, are you tapping into the physicality of the person? That's when you just meet somebody. You keep it very, you keep it very physical, or not that you're touching, you're reading body language, you're hearing the words, you're seeing the person. That's called on a physical level, and then you can go on a more spiritual level, meaning that the person doesn't have to speak. You don't even have to see the person, but rather you're feeling into that person's aura, and that will probably give you more information than if you're just looking at the person. Okay, because when you're looking at the person, a person can be very deceiving, what he's thinking, what he's feeling. But when you delve into for example, a person comes up to me with a big smile, Rabbi, give me a reading, and I'll look at the person. I said, okay, and I'll close my eyes for a second. I'll feel totally depressed, and I feel like crying, and I'll look up to the person. I said, are you going through a very depressed time in your life? He says, yes, totally. So, if I were to look at that person, I wouldn't have picked that up whatsoever. He has a big smile, looks happy, looks like everything's doing well. But it's only when you pass through the physicality of the person and you start tapping into the spiritual, that's when all the information is revealed. But anyways, that was a side point. That's not here what we're here to discuss, even though it's very fascinating.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Okay, so let's go in now into what we spoke about. Very, very important. And we have to know that Arizal wasn't the first Kabbalist around in the block. You know, there were many, many Kabbalists before him. And, but, you know, for some reason, the Arizal's name is known to be the most popular Kabbalist that we know. The question is why? What makes him so popular? What was what we call in Hebrew the chidush of the Arizal? What exactly did it come that the other Kabbalists, for example, the Ramak of Moshe Cordovera, he was in Tzfat before the Arizal. And he was the Rosh Hashiva, he was the Rosh Bahag, he was the leader of the Kabbalists at that time. And the Arizal was a young boy when he got there. He was 30s, 35. And he climbed. So they had Kabbalist traditions in Tzfat well before the Arizal ever showed up. Okay, like I told you, he was only there for a year and 10 months. It wasn't a big deal. And nevertheless, he made a big name for himself. So the answer is, you're looking at it right now, what he was, his novel approach to understanding Kabbalah was to make it into a system of Partsufim. Now, I want to get this clear, that even though it's mentioned in the Zohar Partsufim, not that he made up a concept Partsufim, that's not what I'm saying. The concept of Partsufim was already mentioned in the Zohar, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Saba de Mishpatim, in other parts of the Zohar mentioned. But the problem, we didn't know how they worked together. We didn't know what they meant. We didn't know structurally all the details. It's only when the Arizal came, he broke the codes. He made it functional. He made a system that allows us to see how energy flows from the higher spheres, the higher realms, into the lower realms, and vice versa. How we can elevate lower energy up to the higher energies and then sanctify it. So he has a whole system that he made, that he not that he made up either, but rather that he, through intense learning and Nevuah, and through the learning with Eliyahu Novi, different prophets, through his prophecy, that he was able to crack the code. And this is what he found, called the Partsufim. The first Partsuf that we'll speak about is actually not this one. I should have kept another one. It's all Atik Yomim, but they all look alike. They really all look alike, more or less. So Atik Yomim is the first Partsuf. Now, the second Partsuf is what we're looking at right now, is Arich Ampin. Now, most times in Arizal, you have to know, they're grouped together. And they're referred to in a generic term called Keser. Keser. So when you hear the word Keser, you have to equate it to the two Partsufim, Atik and Arich. Now again, you won't find these explanations in Otzutz Chaim or the Arizal. For some reason, well, I know the reason, he just takes it for granted you know this. So what's most difficult in Arizal, as maybe if you'll discover, is that when you start learning his writings, he starts talking about with one language and changes and chops to a different language. So he'll talk about the language of the Partsufim, Atik, Abav, Ima, Ze'ampi, and then he'll switch to the names of the spheres. Keser, Chochma, Bina, Vadat. So what was I saying? 1 minute we're talking about Partsufim. Second, now he's talking about spheres. So make up your mind. Well, the answer is, and this is a very big lesson. This is what I want to tell you as well. It's a concept called Erke Kinuyim. Erke Kinuyim is probably the most important thing I can ever teach you about Kabbalah, because Erke Kinuyim is really the key to understanding the language of the Arizal. So Kabbalah, I can tell you the concepts, but then you cannot really apply them to the reading of the Arizal, because like I just mentioned, our difficulty is that the Arizal keeps on changing the context of the sentences. It looks like there's a contradictory contradiction from one line to the other. Like I gave you an example. He talks about Parzufim, then changes the subject to spheres, and then goes back to them, and then equates them. They're two different things. That's why that's the next thing I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about this phrase of Erke Kinuyim, which just means really nicknames in English, to be very crude, nicknames, or I prefer to call them, it's relationships. This rule of relationships was coined by the Rashash of Shalom Sharabi. Shalom Sharabi lived 350 years ago, approximately. He comes from Teman, and then he immigrated to Israel. He lived in Yerushalayim, and it's very quickly his story that he was a tremendous Kabbalist, and he had special Ruach HaKodesh. He came into learning Kabbalah as an unknown. Nobody knew who he was, and the story goes is that he was in the yeshiva of Beit El, in the old city in Yerushalayim, and there he wanted a job. So he worked as a janitor. And the Rosh Yeshiva there, his name was Rav Chayun, a Gon Shebegoinim in Kabbalah. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of the Kabbalistic Yeshiva of Beit El, and there he would pose questions to his students, and the students would wonder about the question all night long, and then the next morning they would give the answer to the Rosh Yeshiva, the one in charge, Rav Chakun, to the Rosh Yeshiva. They would give him the answer the next morning, and they would continue this process. The Rosh Yeshiva would give the question at nighttime, and by the morning, the Rosh Yeshiva would wait for the answer from the Talmidim. So one night, the Rosh Yeshiva asked a question that nobody could answer. So that question left off for a few nights. The next morning after a few days, the Rosh Yeshiva found a note with the answer. It was a complicated answer. It was a wonderful answer that nobody could figure out, and nobody knew who gave the answer. And obviously you can guess it was the Rashash. The Rashash was posing as the janitor, that people thought he was just a simple person, but really he was a tremendous genius in Kabbalah. And the story goes is that the Rosh Yeshiva said, "Wow, you're so amazing. I'm going to give you my daughter to marry." And then the Rashash became the next Rosh Yeshiva of Beis El. Okay, and that's where he made his name. And the Rashash didn't write a lot. He wrote a few things, but one of the books that he wrote in there, he spoke about a rule called Erke Kinuyim. And Erke Kinuyim means that when the Arizal speaks, you have to understand that it's a relational type of language that he's using. A relational type of language. Meaning that it's not uncommon that he should categorize things in columns, for example. Now this is very important. We spent a little bit of time on this. You know what? Actually, I'm going to bring up a picture over here. Okay. All right. So here we go. So this is what we call, how do I make it bigger? No. Oh, there we go. Can you see it now? It's all right?
I see it, yeah.
I can't see it now. It's a 2. Oh, here we go. There we go. So tabla hierarchy. Okay. Now, so therefore we find that we have different different columns over here. So we have a column. Okay, this is not the way I would have drawn it, but he draws it like this. So, for example, let's talk about spheres. Here we go. Ketzer Chochmah. Let's talk about the names of Hashem. Havaya. So Havaya of a Yud K Vav K. Let's talk about something that we know. Oirus. Yeah. Here, number Zayin.
Right.
Yachai Neshama. We spoke about that.
Right.
Nikud, Kamas Patach Tzere. Guf, you have the head, Gulgolka, Mochen Yamin, right brain, left brain. Okay, so you see all these columns over here. All these wonderful, wonderful columns over here. But you can also look at them vertically. So let's, for example, let's, for example, compare, I don't want to do all of them. Cholos. Okay. Same. Okay. Okay. You know what? Just for argument, let's compare the first two columns over here. Okay. No, the first two columns, Aleph and Base, to not complicate things. So therefore, I have a column called Spheres, and I have a column, a row. Sorry, I have a row called Spheres, and I have a row called Havayas, the name of Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. That's if I look at it horizontally. But now let's look at it vertically. What I can do is that I can interchange the name of Keser with the Koto Shel Yud. That means the point of the Yud. I could interchange the word Chochma or for the letter Yud. I can interchange Bina for Hey. That means I can tell you like this. I will spell out the name of Hashem. Koto Shel Yud, Yud, Bina, Chesed V'Rotif Netzach Hod Yesod, and Hey. Right? You might say, well, hello, you just mixed up two different rows over there. Half the row you called it spheres, half the row you call it different letters. We'll say, well, welcome to the world of the Arizal. Because this is what he'll do constantly. And not only he'll do that, he'll do it with Patsufim. So he'll call Keser, like we said, Atik,
right.
Atik and Arich. And then he'll move on to Abba, and he'll call it Chochma, and Bina, he'll call it Ima. Oh, here they are. Here we go. Atik Yomim calls it Keser. Abba, Chochma. He'll call Ima, Bina. He'll call the world of Yetzira, he'll call it the Vak. The world of Asiyah, he'll call it Malchus. See how complicated it gets after a while.
Right, and how do you know if he's talking about like which parts of within which world? Like what if he's talking about Atik and Bria instead of Atzilus, or I don't know.
Well, so the rule is like this, that's not such a difficulty because at least Baruch Hashem, we have this rule is that whatever you find in one world, you'll find it in the next world. So it's not really it's not really a difficulty whether to find out, is he talking about Yetzira, Bria, Asiya, which world is he talking about, because they're all identical.
Okay.
So we don't have to twist our heads around that. What we do have to twist around is that which row is he talking about? Is he referring back to the details, which is the spheres? Is he referring to the world of Atik, Atzilus, or is he referring to the letters of the Havaya? You get what I'm saying? You can see how it can get a little bit difficult. But knowing this rule of Erke Kinuyim will open up the entire limud of Kabbalah. The Arizal anyways.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That's absolutely, if you don't know this, I'm sorry, there's no way in a million years you will understand one word, one line or one paragraph of what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's important. So if you want to make a screenshot of that, you're very welcome, or I can send it to you. Okay, so let's go back to the Patsufim. Now, there's another musag, there's another idea that you have to understand, which is called the musag. Well, you know what? Let's continue with the names of the Patsufim. The names of the Patsufim, we've talked about. The first one is Atik.
Right.
Second one is Arich, but they're really considered to be one. Then you have Abba. Here's Abba. He's usually on the right-hand side of Arich. And then you have Ima, which is on the left-hand side of Arich. See, they're very, very short.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're by the Chazer. By the Gon of the Chazer. Then the next Patsufim you have is Yisod Saba, and another Patsuf called Tvuna. Okay? And then these, you're just going to have to memorize their names. They're not very difficult. And then, did I miss anything? Yeah, so here they are when they're superimposed on Abba V'Ima. Okay, that's Yisod Saba and Tvuna. And then you'll have, here's a bigger picture, the Abba V'Ima, Yisod Saba and Tvuna. Abba Ima Yisas Abba Tuna. And then, okay, we did that, sorry. And then here's all the parts of really. So you have Atik Arich, Abba Ve'ima, Yisas Abba Tuna, and then you have smaller Patsufim. Well, we're not going to go Yisas Abba base and Tuna base. And then you have Zer Ampin, a very, very important one. You have Yaakov on one side, and then Leah and Rachel on the other side. So these are all the Patsufim, all the different manifests of Patsufim. So just have a look at that for 1 minute. All right, so we categorize them as 5 Patsufim. Okay, Atik Arich 1, Abba 2, Ima 3, Zer Ampin 4, and then Nukva, which represents Leah Rachel, as 5. Okay, so we categorize 10 spheres, which collectively make every single one of these Patsufim, and we divide the 5 Patsufim into 5 parts. And each of these 5 Patsufim are located where? In every single world. In the world of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Okay? And obviously in the world of Adam Kadmon. So you have 5 worlds. Adam Kadmon, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. And in each 5 of them, again, you'll have the 5 Patsufim. Okay? Is that clear?
Yeah, 5 worlds, 5 Patsufim in each world.
That's right. Okay, so that's why it doesn't get too confusing for us when he talks about something in a particular world, because then we just have to, it's like a copy and paste. Okay, so if it's happening in this world, it's the same relationship will happen. And it's logical as where I told you earlier on that we're interrelated. It's all one big fabric of the universe. So you shake one part of the carpet, the other part of the carpet's going to move. So it's impossible to say that whatever's happening in Asiya with the 5 Patsufim will not have a positive or negative effect on the other ones, because it's like a chain. You move the chain, every part of the link, every link in the chain will move. Okay? So that's that concept of every link of the chain will move. We'll work it either in our benefit or in our, not in our benefit. Okay? It depends what we're doing. Okay? Okay, so, okay, that's all. So here we go. So that's where we go to. So that's the Patsufim. And that's when they're all what we call in a state of halbasha. You see that word, you have to know that word very well. Halbasha means that they are not like this. They are not separate beings. Like I always tell you, I have to always try to remember, even though we talk about individual spheres, individual Patsufim, individual worlds, but it's not like that at all. As I just mentioned to you, they're all interconnected, so they will look more like this. And just another reminder, I said this yesterday, that it's important to understand that these pictures are totally incorrect. They're just for visual purposes, just to give us a pointer, a direction, but never to think that in the spiritual world there are these structures at all. They are just indications of influences and energies that are there that have these characteristics, but there's no way I could put on a 2D paper, a 12-dimensional world on a 2-dimensional piece of paper. That's obvious. It's logical that these are not actual Patsufim or close to any description of it, but rather just a vague direction in order to give us some inkling of how their formation, what their formation is, and what the relation is one to the other, which is the most important point of all this, to know how they correlate one to the other, because you'll never see Atik intermingling with Malchus, for example. That's not a possibility. There's an order, there's a structure over here, and that's what these pictures will give you. But not that they actually look like this. Okay, the lesson goes very, very strongly in this, and he calls it nearly coitus nitius. If you start thinking that these things actually exist as they are the picture, then that's bordering on, Avodah Zarah. Thinking that there are actually other things, other powers besides Hashem.
Right.
Right. That's the whole yesod of Avodah Zarah, serving idols, is that you think that these things actually have their own power besides and their own being, as opposed to Hashem actually powering all these manifestations. Okay, so we just have to, that's a sort of a disclaimer. And as I said, this is called a notion called halbosha. Now, to get a closer view of this, here we go again. Here we go. I got it. Right, there you go. So a better, a more realistic understanding of it is to think of these patzufim as cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cylinders. I wish somebody had told me this when I started to learn. But look at them as cylinders. So look at my cursor over here. So you'd look at Arif. It doesn't matter which way you look at it. Let's look on this the blue cylinder Arif. You have to imagine that it goes all the way down to the bottom over here.
Mm-hmm.
And around that, there's another cylinder called Abba Ve'ima, which goes all the way down. Well, that's actually a machloek, that's a steer in the Arizal, a contradiction in the Arizal. There is Abba Ve'ima actually the total length of all the patzufim, or just they're very short patzufim? Okay, but anyways, for argument's sake, we'll just say it goes all the way down. Okay, and then Yisod Saba, all the way down, just for argument's sake. And then Ze'ampin, all the way down, that's for sure. And then Nukva goes all the way down. Okay, so you'll see that's a better representation of how the patzufim look. Okay, and this is called halbosha. That means Abba ve'imo malbish arich. Malbish, that means arich. Malbish means malbush means a clothing, to wear clothing. So it's this that arich is wearing Abba ve'ima. Abba ve'ima are wearing Yisod Saba, and then Yisod Saba are wearing Ze'ampin, and then Nukva is wearing Ze'ampin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. So that's just very simplistic thing. Now you have to know that it's very, very simplistic, because if you really study this properly, you'll see that, as we said beforehand, it's not only that Arich Ampin has, this. It's not only that there's one set of cylinders, but rather each set has a subset. Okay, so in each world you have a subset of 5, 5, 5, 5, and each one will, as I put these arrows, will influence the other one. So it gets a little bit complicated after a little bit of a while when you get very deep into the wording of the Arizal, how he multiplies and quadruples, and saying it's not just as simple as I'm making it, that it's just 5 patzufim and 5 worlds, but rather an infinite amount of worlds, an infinite amount of patzufim. But for a simplistic look at it, you can say it's 5 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll stop here for the moment.